Hi everybody. The previous module on cognitive development that focused on Piaget's cognitive theory and information processing has made you understand how a child could make sense of this amazing multifaceted world. However, the organization of the thinking process has to get manifested towards the expression of knowledge, which would be made possible only through the development of language. This module gives you an insight of the development of language in young children and presents strategies of fostering the same. This module would facilitate you to know the meaning and concept of language and its various components, to understand the theoretical framework underpinning language development, to apprehend the process of language acquisition and comprehend its milestones, and the fourth objective, the most important, is to realize a teacher's role in fostering language development among young children. Now on to the first aspect, that's the language, its definition and concept. Many of us speak more than one language, but what makes a language? How is it expressed? To put in simple terms, language is a system that releases sounds or gestures to meaning, and language is expressed through speech, writing, and signals. However, to understand the term language better, there is an important aspect to ponder upon. We call it as communication. But how do you communicate successfully? An individual communicates successfully because he or she is able to do at least 4 different things. The first and foremost is the ability to perceive and produce sounds that make up a language and form new words that conveys meaning to other people. The second thing is that the ability to understand the meaning of the formed words. The third is the ability to put these words together in a grammatically appropriate ways so that it is understood by others. The fourth is the ability to effectively use language to communicate with others. These 4 abilities seem to be an usual process of how we communicate, isn't it? But psychologists who study the language acquisition refer to each of these processes by different names. For the first, it's the ability to perceive and produce meaningful sounds. Psychologists name it as phonology, and the formation of new words as morphology. The second, that is the ability to understand the meaning of the formed words, is referred to as semantics. The third, the ability of putting these words together in grammatically appropriate ways, is defined by the word called grammar or syntax. The fourth, the ability to effectively use language to communicate with others, is referred to as pragmatics. Therefore, the 4 components of language, namely phonology and morphology together, semantics, grammar or syntax, and pragmatics, helps you to communicate successfully. Let us look into some examples to understand each of the components better. The first one is morphology, wherein you make new word from a known word. You very well know the word happy, and you can make new words with this word happy, like unhappy, happiest, happiness, or unhappiest. The second is semantics, understanding what does a word actually mean. Here an example is that understanding the utterance doggy only for dogs and not for cats, as already explained to you in cognitive development module. And the third is syntax or grammar. It is how we put words together to convey meaning. Consider this example. We will discuss violence on TV, or we will discuss violence on TV. The way that I give the stress to this sentence delivers 2 different meanings based on how we put the words together. The fourth component being pragmatics, it's a word combination we use in certain social situations. Example, excuse me and get out of my way, though they are synonymous to each other, but the way you put it gives different meaning. So as we are focusing with the development during early years, we must facilitate children to learn language through the below mentioned 4 steps. First one is to understand the differences in speech sounds and learn how to produce them, learn the meaning of words, follow rules to combine them into sentences, and then learn effective ways of communicating with others. Though these steps in developing language seems to be very simple and routine, it is amazing to know how the children do it. Several theories attempted to explain the same. But before trying to understand the theories of language, let us try to answer this question from your own viewpoint. The question is language a biologically determined behavior, or is it an innate learned behavior? Wondering? Now, justify your answer with the following clues provided by Eric Lenneberg. He had arrived at a set of criteria for identifying whether a trait or process or a behavior is a biologically determined one. The clues are: the behavior emerges before it seems necessary. The appearance of the behavior is not the result of a conscious decision. The emergence of the behavior is not triggered by external events, though the surrounding environment must be sufficiently rich for it to develop adequately. And then the next clue is: direct teaching and intensive practice have relatively little effect. The next clue: there is a regular sequence of milestones as the behavior develops, and these can usually be correlated with age and other aspects of development. The last clue is that there is likely to be a critical period. Now, if S is the answer for all the clues that had been specified, then language is said to be biologically determined behavior. But I am very sure some of the clues do have no as an answer and few with S and no. Then how do you conclude? To arrive at an answer, let us understand and develop an insight into the three major perspectives in the theories of language development. The three perspectives are behaviorist perspective, nativist perspective, and interactionist perspective. Now, into detail about the behaviorist perspective. The process of language acquisition being explained by the principles of learning such as conditioning and observational learning are termed as behaviorism. Two theorists, namely B.F. Skinner, who put forth operant conditioning, and Bandura, who put forth observational learning or imitation, explain language acquisition as per behaviorist perspective. Now looking into the Skinner's perspective, consider this example. A 12-month-old baby often babbles bukka bukka dukka dukka nukka bukka. Coincidentally, the mother holds a picture book in front of the baby while he babbles the same, for which the mother smiles, hugs and speaks in return. This reinforcement now aids the baby to say bukka in the presence of books. As an outcome of this example, Skinner concluded that children learn language as they are selectively rewarded for sounds or behaviors that are considered as appropriate or correct utterances. Now, Bandura's perspective. Bandura, also a behaviorist, explained language development and its acquisition by young children as initiated by imitation, which then later combines with reinforcement for fostering language learnt. In other words, children tend to overhear language being used by others and they try to imitate the same. For example, a parent, when repeatedly asks a child to say, "I want biscuit," the child overhears and imitates the language and puts it in own words as "wanna biscuit." The parent praises and treats the child with biscuit after the needed response, which in turn reinforces the child to use the same utterance again and again. After looking into the Skinner's perspective and Bandura's perspective, let us see what are the supporting evidences for behaviorism. The first evidence is that the behaviorists believe that all learning is acquired step by step through associations and reinforcement. Also, according to this view, the reinforcement of the quantity and quality of talking to child affect rate of language development. When a 6-month-old says "ma, ma, ma," they are showered with attention and praise. This is exactly what the baby wants and will make the sounds again to get the same rewards. The finding of a research conducted by Thomas Lee Monda et al. 2001 further supports behaviorism. The study had concluded that the percentage of toddlers knowing at least 50 words is on the rise for toddlers of highly responsive mothers in comparison with low responsive mothers. Though Skinner's and Bandura's perspective explains how reinforcement and imitation contributes to early language learning, there are certain flaws as their assumption does not explain the whole story. The major flaws of behaviorism in language development is going to be described to you now. The first is that children produce many sounds, words or sentences that are never uttered by adults. For example, I want biscuit is a sentence uttered by an adult. If only imitation helps in fostering language, then the child is expected to say it in the same way, but the other way happened, the child responds as want a biscuit. Children make consistent errors, though not attributed to mispronunciation, and produce words that are not even heard in the adult language. The third flaw is that, moreover, the children seem to continue to produce incorrect utterances despite being corrected several times. So, to bridge the gap of the behaviorist perspective, nativist perspective by Noam Chomsky was put forth. Noam Chomsky was the first one to recognize that language learning is a wholesome responsibility of the child, himself or herself. He proposed that language is a product of an unlearned, biologically based, internal mental structure. This innate mental structure is termed as LAD, Language Acquisition Device, by Chomsky. And Chomsky has said that LAD has got its own features. The first is that LAD contains a set of features common to all languages, which he termed as universal grammar. Universal grammar refers to the entire set of rules or linguistic parameters which specify all possible human languages. LAD allows children to combine the words learnt to form grammatically consistent sentences at an early age. As in behaviorism, there are certain supporting evidences for nativism too. The first is that the major milestones of language development have seen a similar sequence in young children from any part of the world. The second is that the rules that underlie a language are too complex to be acquired by children in their early years. However, children do acquire it, which concludes that certain aspects of language are innately specified. If an adult deliberately says a grammatically incorrect sentence, the child would notice. And next support evidence is that children often say things that are ungrammatical, such as mama ball, which they cannot have learnt passively. The next supporting evidence is that the mistakes such as I drawed instead of I drew show that they are not learning through imitation alone. However, there are certain faults of nativism. The first is that linguists have failed to specify the nature of universal grammar. Many linguists have speculated that this may not be possible. The second flaw is that there is little neurological evidence to support the existence of a biologically based LAD. The third flaw is that children's first word combinations like biscuit give or wanna biscuit instead of give biscuit reveals no grammatical rules followed by them as proposed by Chomsky. The well-known fact that children mastering the language usage happens as a gradual and steady process, and it is not of a sudden, innately determined process. So after learning about the behaviorism and nativism, one another proposal of interactionism comes into place. Interactionist theories of language development appraise the interplay between environmental and biological factors in the process of language acquisition. Interactionists accept the fact that children have a strong biological predisposition to acquire a language. However, they differ from nativist assumption in providing strong evidence that the social support provided by the parents of a young language learner and the social context in which language learning child is instructed are as important as biological predispositions. Bruner has given his own perspective as an interactionist. He proposed that parents provide their children a language acquisition support system, or LAS. LAS is a collection of strategies that parents employ to facilitate their children's acquisition of language. Few major strategies of facilitating young children in learning language are scaffolding, infant-directed speech or motherese, and an expansion and recast. On to scaffolding. The parents deliberately use language at a level that is slightly beyond what children can comprehend. With this support, the child acquires complex language more quickly than they might on their own. The second, which is called as infant-directed speech or motherese, it refers to the pattern of speaking wherein the parents speak in a higher pitch, stress important words, and talk more slowly to their infants. This method grabs a young child's attention and increases the chance of their understanding the message. The third one is expansion and recast. Expansion and recast is a pair technique language support system. It occurs when a child takes a child's utterance and expands on its complexity. For example, when a child utters a wrong sentence, Sarah eated, the parent expands the complexity, adding, yes, that's right, Sarah ate her dinner. In this example, the parents recast the child utterances as well as they correct the grammar of it. In sum, each of the three theoretical perspectives, namely behaviorism, nativism, and interactionism, adds valuable insight to the study of human language as given to you in this slide. Behaviorism provides some thought on plausible mechanisms that underlie the acquisition of few facets of human language. Nativism highlights that an innate language mechanism serves as a part of a brain that facilitates the learning of a language in a time that children can typically do. Interactionism focuses the key role of the social environment and the importance of social input in structuring the learning of language. Now, answer to the previously asked questions, I hope you support interactionism. In congruence with the above said theories, young children prepare for language in many ways before uttering the first word. Let us discuss the stages of language acquisition in two major heads, namely the first 2 years, it's 0 to 2 years, and 2 to 6 years, which is considered to be the early childhood period. The milestones to be accomplished in the first 2 years of life in the language domain are discussed under certain heads. The first is cooing and babbling. Cooing and babbling. Making vowel-like noises called cooing begins by 2 months. Gradually consonants are added and around 6 months babbling appears. Babbling is the sound made by an infant while repeating consonant vowel combinations in long string such as ba 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 ba, na 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 na. Around 7 months, babbling starts to include sounds of mature spoken language. Through babbling, babies experiment different sounds and later blends it into their first words. Now the second aspect of first words. Children's first word usually refer to objects that move, such as car, ball, cat, etc. or familiar actions, bye-bye, more, or outcomes of familiar actions such as dirty, hot, and wet. While learning a new word, every infant do not use it the right way as adults do. Hence, two errors are commonly found among the infants in using the word. They are underextension and overextension. Underextension is when the toddler applies a learnt word too narrowly. The error is referred as underextension. For example, a baby uses the word doll only for the worn and tattered doll that she carried around with her much of the day. The second is overextension. Here, when the toddler applies a learnt word to a wider collection of objects and events. For example, the word car is used for even buses, trains, trucks, etc. Then the third stage is the two-word utterance phase. The two-word utterance phase is called the telegraphic stage because the toddlers speak just as given in telegram. They leave out smaller and less important words. Some of the two-word utterances are give biscuit, daddy outside, more milk, etc. The fourth stage is comprehension versus production, which involves again two components, language production and language comprehension. Language production is the words and the word combination that children can say. Language comprehensions are the words that the child could actually understand. At all ages, comprehension develops ahead of production. Comprehensions need not only to recognize the meaning of the word, while production demands that they should pronounce by recalling the word from their memories and recognizing its meanings. Now on to the second level, that is 2 to 6 years. The cognitive development facilitates language development. In turn, language helps the children to express a wide range of cognitive skills. Between 2 to 6 years, the language development is remarkable. The following section details the language development in certain aspects like pronunciation, vocabulary development, grammatical development, forming sentences, and becoming an effective conversationalist. First, pronunciation. Certain sounds and sound combinations such as Z, W, D, S and ST, STR, DR, FL are very difficult to pronounce at this age. Constant listening to such words can only help in pronouncing it rightly. Second, vocabulary development. By the age of 2, a vocabulary of 200 words could be absorbed. But by age 6, these children would know about 14,000 words. This tremendous improvement in vocabulary happens through a process called force mapping. But what is force mapping? It's nothing but connecting a new word with an underlying concept after only a brief encounter. Also, preschoolers learn the meaning of new words by a special rule called principle of contrast. Principle of contrast is a principle used by young children to find the meaning of a new word by contrasting it with word meanings that they already know. For example, the child saying plant man in place of gardener. Preschoolers also extend language meanings through metaphor. Metaphors permit children to communicate in a special, memorable way. For example, a child to represent a stomachache says, fire engine in my tummy. The third aspect is grammatical development. Grammar is a way the words are combined to form meaningful sentences. By 2 to 3 years, English-speaking children use simple sentences in the subject-verb-object order. Later, they add S to plural words, add prepositions, and by the age of 3.5, children would have mastered the rules of grammar. However, they apply these rules so consistently that they overextend the rules to exceptional words. This type of error is called over-regularization. Example, my tar car braked, or I runned faster. Between 3 to 6 years, these children master even more complex grammatical forms but do make certain errors. The fourth milestone is forming sentences. By 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4 word sentences are used, but these sentences are incomplete. After 3 years, a child forms 6 to 8 word sentences containing all parts of speech. The fifth milestone is becoming an effective conversationalist. As and when the children acquire vocabulary and grammar rules, they also learn to use language in social context. The practical social side of language that helps to effectively converse with others is called pragmatics, as already defined to you. The young children during their preschool year make considerable improvement in mastering pragmatics. Now let us look into the factors influencing language development. The first and the foremost factor is intelligence. More intelligent the child, better is their language development. The second is type of discipline. Children growing up under permissive disciplinary technique talk more than children brought up by authoritarian disciplinary technique. The third factor is ordinal position. Firstborn babies talk faster as parents give more attention and have more time to talk to them. The family size is another factor. Bigger the size of the family, the child has more people to talk to and could develop language at a faster rate. Then the socio-economic status. The children born in upper and middle class families are more exposed to organized activities and hence a language is faster than lower class families. Then next is bilingualism. Children exposed to 2 or 3 more languages at a time could talk at a faster rate. Then the last factor is sex role typing. Boys are expected to talk less than girls. Also, boys are expected to talk matters that boast and criticize others. Now on to the most important part of the module, that the role of teachers. In particular, it talks about early childhood teachers in fostering language development during their early years. After realizing the theoretical inputs of language acquisition of children in 0 to 6 years, recognizing its milestones and understanding the factors influencing the same, a teacher or a facilitator should apprehend their role in fostering effective language learning in a young child. Researchers had found that early childhood teachers can play a crucial role in fostering young children's emerging language skills when they happen to do certain things as projected to you in this slide. First skill is to value their roles in children's language development. Children learn many important things from them as they look at the teacher as a role model. And the teacher should be able to read with children as it is enjoyable, a time to feel close and a special time to share with the children during reading. And the second skill is to regularly engage children in language enhancing activities by exposing children learn new words, colors, names from books, and by fostering children to become better talkers and listeners, understanding that the children are never too young to learn about books. The third role is to organize the classroom to support language. This can be done by planning regular time during the day to read to children, and by displaying lot of books to read, provide a quiet place for reading, and allowing children to read on their own. Then the next role is by actively engaging parents in the school. The teachers can actually seek support from parents in the classroom. They can involve parents as guest speakers or advisory or parent boards. They can converse with parents to form a strong partnership. The last role is that the teachers should assume themselves as role models for literary by personally enjoying reading, by spending more time in reading, and by having good memories of being read to as a child. To sum up, hope this module had given you a deep insight about the 4 major components of language and the way it has been used in day-to-day communication without much effort. Thus, to be effortless language learning, being supported by behaviorism and nativism, does conclude that effective learning of language is both by the social support and the social context the child is provided with, which we call it as interactionism. Also, this module elaborates the process of language learning with reference to the milestones proposed for children of 0 to 6 years. However, the most important part of the module focuses on the role of early childhood teachers in fostering the language acquisition of every child. Thank you so much. Hope to meet you in the next module.